Welcome to our fifth political candidate forum in advance of the November 8th general election. This forum, a cooperative production of the Tallahassee Democrat and WFSU Public Media. I'm Tom Flanagan from WFSU Public Media. I'm joined by James Call from the Tallahassee Democrat. And the focus of this forum today is the race for U.S. House of Representatives District 2. Now, while both candidates for this race, Al Lawson and Neil Dunn, were invited to participate in the forum and given multiple options for dates and times, Neil Dunn's campaign said he was unable to attend.
So we are considering this an empty seat forum where only one candidate, in this case Congressman Al Lawson, is present to answer questions. We will ask questions that we think voters have prior to Election Day, just like we would for any article or story you would see or hear at the Tallahassee Democrat or WFSU Public Media.
We also need to let you know that the League of Women Voters of Tallahassee has been a partner in our previous forums in this series, and they have issued a statement that their National League of Women Voters U.S. guidelines and long-standing policies would prevent them from taking part in forums where only one of the candidates would participate. Now, we completely respect this decision, and therefore the Tallahassee Democrat and WFSU Public Media are the sole hosts of this particular forum.
And as we mentioned, the candidate today for U.S. House of Representatives District 2 is Congressman Al Lawson. Before we get started, we remind everyone watching us on social media, please hit the share button and help all your friends see today's forum too. We expect it to be about 30 minutes long. Like all of our forums, we have quite a few questions, so that we ask you, Congressman, to keep your responses brief, but understandable. Make your point. And with only one candidate, we will not be using a timekeeper this forum. In the middle of the forum, we also have a lightning round when we will ask you to keep your answer to just one sentence.
And at the end of the forum, of course, we'll give you 60 seconds to make the case directly to voters and share your website, any other important information that you'd like to share. So if you are watching on Facebook and you have a question for the candidate, go ahead and type out those in the comments, and we will get to as many of those as we possibly can. As we mentioned, time is limited. We're just going to be rolling right through this. So to improve your chances of your question being asked, please keep it brief. And always we ask that you keep it polite. So, Mr. Lawson, any questions before we get underway, sir?
No, I'm just happy to be here. I always look forward to WFSU and the Democrats interview all through my political career. I was always here for a bandwagon and didn't want to miss it, but I know COVID-19 had something to do with us not having it.
Yes, and we hope to bring that back at some point in the future. So let's kick off this one here. Mr. Lawson, why are you the right person for the job?
That's a great question. I am the only Democrat really between Pensacola and Orlando. And throughout my career, I have worked hard for North Florida. And one of the things that I've found out is that all of the resources that have come down for our universities, have been a result of myself working when we wasn't in majority across party lines with Speaker Ryan and everyone else to bring those resources down to the state of Florida. And so my opponent has not been able to do that. My opponent, you want to work together when you're in North Florida. You learn that you need to be together on issues because everybody else outnumbers us. So as a result, I am the person that have given my whole political career towards working on bringing changes into North Florida, whether with the environment, or whether they with university education, whether in SNAP benefits for people who are in need, and then hurricane relief. Yeah, and so that is one of the key reasons why I think I'm the best person for the job. No one would have a report card any better than me.
All right, and again, in about 45 seconds or so, you already mentioned that your opponent in this job may not have the same skill set in trying to come up with compromise or accommodation. given different points of view. Is there anything else that you think makes Mr. Dunn a less able candidate for the job than yourself?
Well, I think one of the things is he hadn't had a history of working for places like Tallahassee in Florida. And so as a result, for the last 5.5 years, he's been holding the line and the whole line on a partisan basis, haven't been willing to really step across the lines so that we can work together. I have stepped across the line to help them with issues such as the one problem that we had with Michael in North Florida, going down to make sure that we get the resources there in that area for the base that is down there, and also working with veterans. He is a veteran, but all of the money that come down to help veterans with, he's voted against it. So as a result, he hadn't been able to do that much for veterans. Then he blamed it on other things, the reason why he can actually do it. And then when we had money down for hurricane relief, he voted against hurricane relief. And what is interesting about it is that a week or so later, all the Republicans that voted against hurricane relief for Florida, the devastation that we had here, they were asking me to sign a letter to ask for more resources in order to help the people down in Central Florida in the places where all the flooding was taking place. So you have to be able to put people above politics, and I don't think that he's been able to do that.
Okay, thank you, sir. James.
Congressman, your opponent, Neil Dunn, Congressman Neil Dunn, is running a television commercial that says Al Lawson cannot be trusted because you vote 100% of the time with Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi. Your response to that ad, 30 seconds.
Well, that doesn't bother me. And the way it is in Washington, just about everybody vote with the party leadership, whether it's Republican or Democrat. And so, that might make a good sound bite, but it's not really true. There have been many times that I have not voted with the leadership and they understood it. Now, let me tell you, I have a long history, of working across the line to bring resources to North Florida. And some of the votes that you make with the speaker have really been rewarding for this area. Over $219 million has come in as a result of it. The funding for the university, the high magnetic lab, monies for FAMU, money for different projects in Gaston County, Leon, and so forth, and all the way down through to Jacksonville. And so, I kind of laughed when I saw the commercial because when Ryan was speaker, I was able to get Ryan to come to Jacksonville doing all the flooding from the hurricane, and at the same time work with them to get money down there to the Corps of Engineers, over $100 and some million to make things happen. So, I don't see him going to have those meetings with Nancy Pelosi like I went to have with Tim Ryan.
Congressman, sort of like the 3-second rule in basketball. let's somewhat shorten because we have 30 minutes, and this is an important race with national implications, possibly. Your opponent also voted no to accept the electoral count from Arizona and Pennsylvania in the 2020 election. Does that make Congressman Dunn an election denier? And if so, why should it matter?
He's been an election denier that Joe Biden is not president. And I heard for the first time today, he said, he's been the president for 2 years. But he was election denier because he was following along the line, of former President Trump. It should have been an easy thing for him to do and say, don't be afraid. He didn't have anything to be afraid of. It just say, that he won the election.
Congressman, you said you'd secured more than $87 million in American Rescue Plan money for the late great Congressional District 5 that you've been in, along with another $210 million for Florida State University, Florida A&M University, Tallahassee Community College. Can you really say this money would have come into North Florida even if you had not been in Congress?
I'm not really sure. I know that it's what I advocated for. I knew how bad the universities would hurt, during the pandemic, kids out of school and so forth. And so the money comes. You got to have somebody who's going to fight for the funding for North Florida, just like they do for Michigan, Arizona and other places. And that's what I was doing. I was fighting for those dollars because I knew that my colleagues who are on the Republican side were going to go against it. And so I wanted to be one of them that championed those funds to come down to Florida.
Congressman, has Joe Biden been a successful president?
Yes, I think he have, and I think he is doing better. He's only been in office for right at 2 years, and I think that a lot of things such as the American Rescue Act and all the stimulus money that's come down, has been very beneficial. It's just that through the press and so forth, some people are saying that they need to stay away from the president because of his rating, his numbers. But I say most presidents end up the first couple of years having the same kind of problem where they're not very popular.
Where has President Biden struggled?
So what now?
Where has President Biden struggled?
I think his struggles, I think his main struggle is communication. The communication, what you're really doing, what is going to happen to the deficit. Can we prevent the economy from going into inflation? But I think a lot of positive things that he's done, and bringing resources for Ukraine, the problem that we're having there. What is going to happen after a pandemic, except, it's going to be very stressful, and it's going to be very stretching on the budget, and you're going to be spending more money than you take into the budget.
Okay, and at a luncheon today, you described the Inflation Reduction Act as a deficit reduction measure, and your opponent, Congressman Dunn, described it as the militarization of the Internal Revenue Service with the hiring of 80,000 IRS agents to audit people. He calls it a bad bill. You didn't respond to that criticism. What do you say to that?
I really wanted to respond to the criticism, but I never did get the opportunity. When he talk about hiring the IRS agent, what he don't tell the public is that that's over a 10-year period of time, and over the next 10 years, you're going to have 50,000 IRS agents that quit their job or retire. And right now, if you're an average citizen and you're trying to call the IRS to try to get things done, it's very tough. And so this is not unusual. It's just so happened to coming through at this particular time. But we need agents because the top 1% of wage owners in this country doesn't pay any taxes. It's always been paid by the middle class. And so by having Deal Dunn say that, it just makes a good television bite, instead of telling you the whole truth. Our agents don't make that much. They're not going to be jumping on people, but they're going after, that $116 billion corporation that paid less than 15% taxes in America.
Congressman, this summer the House passed 2 abortion rights bills with your support. The Women's Health Protection Act, which would codify abortion rights protections into law, and the Ensuring Access to Abortion Act to protect patients' rights to travel to access out-of-state abortion service. Senate blocked passage of both. So what comes next for abortion rights?
Well, I think, we need to take it back up again. There's no reason for them to overturn Roe v. Wade and give it down to the states, and you're going to have all states going in different directions. And it's time now for men, lawmakers, is to stop trying to tell women, what kind of health care they can receive. Women can make their own decision. I'm for women being able to make their decision in terms of the abortion issue, other than, especially in cases of rape and incest and the care of a mother's health. And so I support women's right to choose.
Okay, Congressman, now we're going to move to our ever-popular lightning round. One-sentence answers, and you ready?
I'm ready.
Is there a point for you where the right to abortion ends, or does it continue all the way through the pregnancy?
No, I think late-term abortion that, I don't support.
Okay. Should Congress revive the Voting Rights Act and codify anti-discrimination provisions into election law?
Yes, they should.
What is the one thing you want to accomplish if you win this race?
The one thing I want to accomplish if I win this race is to make sure that we continue to lower healthcare costs and to provide lowering prescription drugs, especially insulin for diabetes patients.
What will be your message to Congressman Dunn if you were to lose this election?
my message to Congressman Dunn, if I lose this leg, which I don't plan to lose, but my message to him is to work for the people in North Florida and not for the Republican Party. We have a lot of poverty here, a lot of issues with education, a lot of funding that I need. Is to take up where I left off. If I can bring 400 million to this district, then you bring 450 million to this district.
Okay. Hey, Congressman, couple policy bills that you promoted. What is the biggest win for Florida's 2nd congressional district in the infrastructure bill?
I think the biggest win in the infrastructure bill is the dollars that we provide for the counties in order for them, where they don't get any dollars to do infrastructure, and the money that we brought down to the state of Florida that you see now in the infrastructure, that the governor of Florida going around handing out money, that really came from the federal government of what we passed.
And what is the biggest win for Florida's 2nd congressional district in the Inflation Reduction Act?
I think the biggest win for Florida and the Inflation Reduction Act is that for the first time, we're going to make people who make above $400,000 a year pay more taxes than the middle class.
What's one election reform measure you support?
I support the Voting Rights Act, George Lewis Voting Rights Act, that we should implement. What has happened since the voting rights in 1965 is making sure that people have the opportunity to vote and express themselves.
And one that you oppose?
I oppose really all of the stuff that you hear the rhetoric about, the deficit that is being caused by the Biden administration. They don't talk about how much the deficit was under the Trump administration and why we have this deficit, with the war in Ukraine and with the pandemic, that we had to bring dollars down to all of the people in the state of Florida.
So what do you have to say about your opponent, Congressman Neil Dunn, passing on this opportunity to participate in this forum?
I think it's very bad. He has canceled out on a lot of reform programs that we have, such as this, and I hope he shows up again tomorrow, and he showed up at least one today. This is not about us. It is about the people. And we need the press to be able to tell the people where we are in our positions, and that's what we need to participate in. You don't try to protect yourself, because we are being paid by the people. We are hired by the people, and they send us up to Washington to represent them.
Well, Congressman, you're running for election in a newly drawn 2nd congressional district. Used to be over there, and now it's kind of over here. How will this impact your work? Do you see it as a U.S. representative?
Well, that's a very good question. I have represented a lot of this area when I was in the Florida Senate. And so therefore, I'm very familiar with a lot of the people in this area. I think I've run in all these counties before, except about 3 of them. And so how would it impact my ability to represent? I don't think it would impact my ability at all. I mean, whether I was down doing the Apalachicola Bay Protection Act, whether I was in the water wars with Georgia and the Florida River, or whether in Bay County helping them get an international airport, bringing dollars down in Micah to the Air Force Base there, it's something that I do naturally in order to get support. So when you have the community college in this area and the university in this area, I don't think anybody else can do it better than I can.
Do you believe that Governor DeSantis deliberately targeted you in advocating for the elimination, essentially, of your old district, District 5, and redrawing the District 2?
Absolutely. The governor targeted this district. He brought in people from out of state. They paid state dollars, $450,000 and more, to draw a district. The House and the Senate didn't really want to do it, but he bullied the Senate president and the House Speaker and kind of threatened them to give him what he really wanted. And I think this was because of his position of showing them what he could do in Florida, because he wanted to run for president. I had the opportunity to serve with him 2 years in Congress, and never would thought that he would want to do anything like this. And so it's not Dunn's fault that it's happened, but it's the governor, because he doesn't think about the resources. But I've had to call his office to tell me it's 600-some thousand on the table, that you all not taking advantage of, 600-some million that you all not taking advantage of. Y'all need to do it before the deadline, or it goes to other states, because they got so partisan. And I hate to make this talk too much here, but they have not been responsible, to the dollars that we brought down that gives them the opportunity to go around in these counties and say, I'm giving you money. They don't tell him it came from the federal government.
Well, as a follow-up to that, if we could, after the redistricting took place, Steve Vancour, well-known state elections pundit here in Tallahassee, said a Lawson victory, in his words, would be nothing shy of an absolute miracle. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that. You know, they said that before when I ran for the Senate, when I ran in all the rural areas, and I ran against good opponents, and we were able to outwork them. You know, just like right now, we're working hard. We done made over 40,000 telephone calls into the district. You know, we're going into the district and meeting with the people, letting them know to look at our record and look at Neil Dunn's record. You know, if you don't care anything about your resources, then you vote for Neil Dunn. But if you care about having resources, putting food on the table for your family, you know, having lower healthcare costs, you know, then you vote for Al Lawson because he will deliver.
One final follow-up, and it's back to something that James had talked about before, the fact that Congressman Dunn was not a big fan of the electoral process, at least in 2020, and he and many of his Republican colleagues in Congress have been throwing ice water, if you will, on the validity of our electoral system. And as he, I think, mentioned at Tiger Bay today, a lot of people don't trust our elections. How do you rebuild trust in the electoral system so that not only you, but also perhaps Congressman Dunn can have faith that it's actually working?
Well, we have a good electoral system in the state of Florida, and we have a good one in this country. But if you have a president that tells lies about the electoral process, then some members buy into it. And they buy into it because they're afraid of him. And I can tell you right now, Neil Dunn should feel very good about the election in Florida because at one time he voted for me. He voted for me. And he gave me campaign contributions. And so I represented him real well, you know, when I was in the Senate and stopped by his office on a number of occasions. So there was no problem with the electoral system there. I mean, it's even better today. There's going to always be glitches, but you can't blame it on whatever happened someplace else because the president said he was supposed to win and did not win. And that's a question was asked to him today. Who is the president is legitimate? So he tried to go around about and say he's been president for 2 years. The president election was legitimate.
Very good, sir. Okay, yeah, I didn't want to hog all the time here, James.
Okay.
But I know we got to get these out of the way here.
Should we go to 7 or should we go to 8?
Let's see. Well, let's do 7 and then 8, and so we can get them all in.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, you just noticed that there's some daylight between you and Congressman Dunn, Congressman Lawson. But you and your opponent maybe could be characterized as peas from different pods, so to speak. The AARP says that you voted 100% of the time for AARP's positions on economic issues facing working people and seniors. Mr. Dunn scored 10%, and Common Cause Democracy Scorecard finds Mr. Dunn voted just once with the nonpartisan group's position on democracy-related bills. You compiled a perfect score of 18 out of 18. So Mr. Dunn isn't here to explain himself. So if I could ask you this, maybe for 30 seconds here for a response, who is out of step with North Florida, and what's your take on that?
Well, if you're for seniors, you know, you're going to vote on those issues. The people who have given so much on the front end of their careers and now on the back end career, they need help, you know, and so I'm with them. I fight for them. I don't understand why Congressman Dunn, who is not in this chair, to handle this particular question simply because how could you vote against seniors? And we have a lot of seniors here in North Florida and a lot of them in Bay County and in Jackson County. But he voted against them, the issues that they want. They're concerned about Medicare. They're concerned about Social Security. Is anything going to happen to Social Security? Did he vote to extend Social Security for another 10 years? Those are the issues that really separate us. He is with big business, and I'm for the people. So there's a clear distinction between us. He voted to bail out Wall Street, and I voted to bail out Main Street.
Okay, so I'm going off script here, given that answer. You just sort of outlined the big differences between the two parties. You supported the Inflation Reduction Act. Mr. Dunn opposed it. Mr. Dunn is a member of the Republican Study Committee, and he supports their Blueprint to Save America, which is the exact opposite of Joe Biden's economic plan. And it includes all the cuts that you talked about, the Social Security, Medicare, the Affordable Care Act, and Head Start and climate initiatives. Clear distinction on economic policy between you and Congressman Dunn. But you haven't seemed to have focused your campaign message on economic issues. Why is that?
Well, it's interesting. We have focused on economic issues in terms of protecting the middle class, you know, making sure that corporate America, the billion-dollar people pay more taxes. We have worked by creating jobs. More jobs have been created now than any other time in American history. Those are economic issues. And at the same time, lowering unemployment, and it's at the lowest rate it ever been before, about 3.5. And so as a result, all of those are economic issues. You know, I don't understand, and I told him today, and I told him at Tiger Bay, you know, you're not going to ever accomplish anything unless it was like it was when I was in the Senate and in the House. You know, for 28 years, I served under Republican governors. You know, you got to come together as a unit to do something for the American people. If it's only about leadership and who is in control, then we don't ever get anything done. And that's what is happening. You got your ideas about how to move America forward. We have ours, but somebody's got to come in the middle. When I went to Washington, D.C., I went there to be able to work across the aisles the same way I worked in the Senate. Now, that was very difficult, very hard to do, you know, but I was able to get a lot of things accomplished, you know, just by doing it. Sometimes I felt like the Lone Ranger, you know, but we was able to make some progress.
But getting back to the 2nd Congressional District, and also in a reference to the Capitol Tiger Bay luncheon, the question was asked, and you listed poverty as the biggest economic challenge for the 2nd Congressional District, and your opponent listed China. Can you help us understand what that's about?
That was the worst remark about China that my opponent did that I've ever heard. China has nothing to do with our economic ability here in America. Sure, you know, when I was in Argentina and Brazil and other places, looking at what China was doing over there and let them know how the American farmers felt and what we need to do and how we want to work with other countries, it was not China that is causing us a problem. You know, China has always been there. You know, he voted against a bill that for chips. That chips, you need chips in everything. He voted against a chip bill, which is going to create 100,000 high-paying jobs in America. Because chips goes in cars, they go into everything. You know, he voted against it. So if you're trying to increase the economy in America, you know, make America much more sovereign and powerful, why would you vote against the chip bill? You know, we just got through that. And that's one of the things, you know, it's obvious that he's doing a very good job of carrying the Republican agenda, but he's not carrying the agenda of the people in the 2nd Congressional District.
And one final follow-up on this issue, Congressman, you know, Mr. Flanagan and myself, we both have covered 30 election cycles here in North Florida, and you've been on the ballot for many of those elections. And but a lot of people throughout the district seem to be concerned about the campaign you're running. Friends of yours concerned about the campaign that you're conducting. But at Tiger Bay today, you made the old he-coon remark.
Yeah.
So tell us, how what's it going to look like when the he-coon, when daybreak comes and the he-coon makes his move?
When the old he-coon walks just before dawn, you know, Al Lawson going to be in the lead and going to win this race. I learned that from the late Lawton Childs, you know, and so I was just trying to tell him at Tiger Bay, we've been there, you know, we have fought these battles, you know, I've been there for you, you know, and I'll be walking just before dawn.
Congressman, we'll give you about another 45 seconds for any closing remarks that you might want to make, a website, anything that you want to say, sir. It's all yours for 45.
Okay, first I want to thank you all for having this forum. this is very helpful that we get the message out to the people who will be going to vote in a very short period of time. You know, I have lived my life, adult life, and being involved in politics. And I have worked to do everything that I possibly could for those who are less fortunate, you know, to work with our state workers, to bring healthcare insurance down, you know, to make people have a living wage, you know, so that they can take care of their family. And I want to continue to work for them in Washington and give people the type of leadership that they deserve. So I asked them, and I humbly asked them, to vote for Al Lawson on November the 8th. And I promise you, I will stand tall for you in Washington.
Our thanks to the candidate, the Tallahassee Democrat, WFSU Public Media, and all of our viewers for joining us for this program. You can find a replay of the forum and all the others in this series on our YouTube pages, plus Tallahassee.com and WFSU.org. The recorded broadcast will be aired as far as the audio version is concerned on Thursday, October 20th at 11 a.m. on WFSU 88.9 FM. Our next live forum will be for the Leon County School Board District 4 race. That'll take place on Wednesday, October 19th at 11 a.m. Candidates in that race are Laurie Lawson-Cox and Alexander L. Stemley.
And if you have any questions for any of our upcoming forums, please email us at news@tallahassee.com. And you can look for these forums plus interviews with the candidates on our website. Please keep an eye out for our special general election insert, which will be in our print version of the newspaper on Sunday, October 23rd. On behalf of Tom Flanagan and Congressman Al Lawson, have a great day.